When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Schinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap / review some movies. I'm your host, as usual, Steven Schinder, and joining me for this particular episode where we're talking about Marvel's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, it is Mr. Multiverse. How are you doing?
I am good. Thanks for having me on. This is a first. To quote Ant-Man, thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, can we just take a moment to appreciate how great the Ant-Man movies turned out to be? Like, I know people were like scoffing at it when it was announced, but like I was like somewhat familiar with like Ant-Man, the concept, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be really fun. Like Marvel's done pretty well so far, you know?
That's what I never got, especially after Ant-Man the Wasp, when people were like, "Oh, why did it have to come after Infinity War? That's stupid." And I'm like, "No, we needed something like Ant-Man and the Wasp, but kind of like chill. It was like a nice little cherry on top after having a giant ass like dinner. So it was like something just to lighten the mood. People forget that these movies are meant to be fun.
Yeah, it was sort of the comic relief movie that people needed after the dreariness of Infinity War, and it ended up tying in really nicely with that and with Endgame. Like, it ended up being more important than people, I guess, initially expected, and it worked.
It was actually, yeah, it was like a seamless transition between the two Avengers movies. So
So I guess we can start by like saying what we've thought of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe overall, just in general. So like, what's been your experience with the MCU and I guess Marvel as a whole, if you want to talk about that a bit?
I guess, like, for me, I've been in it since Iron Man, like since seeing Iron Man when I was way back in 2008, where the idea of an Avengers movie was like unheard of, and then we got it, and now it's like, an Avengers movie, what's that? But some people don't think like people don't think, like, way back when Iron Man first came out and they said the buildup was going to be an Avengers movie. No one thought for a damn second that it was going to explode into this. Now, I will be the first to admit that not every Marvel movie is perfect. There are some where I'm just like, I don't care for it. Or I'll watch it once and be like, that's enough for me. Um, but on a whole, I think it's been doing very well. For cinematic universes, this is probably like the most consistent um, and well balanced. I've been like WandaVision. I know everyone's like, oh, it's too slow. And I'm like, really? Where was this when when Mandalorian was coming out weekly? No, really, like, people like, I don't hear anyone talk about like, oh, the weekly wait for Mandalorian, but God help you if it's like WandaVision, like, oh, it's too slow, WandaVision's too slow, and I'm like, where was this during Mandalorian coming out the 2 seasons?
It's like when I saw all those complaints from some of the fans in these groups, it was like, what were they expecting the show to be? Like, it was no secret that it would be like homages to sitcoms, but there'd be more to it, like beneath the surface. And it is like WandaVision feels to me like Twin Peaks, in that it can go from like super goofy to super unsettling with like a snap of a finger. And then you had like episode 4, and people were like praising that. And it's, while it was good, it felt to me like the spoon feeding episode. But yeah, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and all the upcoming stuff. I'm like pretty much all in with the Disney Plus MCU stuff. Like it feels like they're doing more to connect the TV and movie side of things, and like it really is like a master class of like how to do the cinematic universe.
And here's the other thing I'm going to say about WandaVision, and we're going to talk about this again whenever Loki shows up on Disney Plus. I think the MCU has gotten to the point where it can be experimental and weird, right? Like,
yeah,
it's allowed to be that, right? It's been like what, over 10 years. I think it's time to have something a little new. So, that's what I'm mostly here for, is just the weirdness of WandaVision, and I'm looking forward the most to Loki, of just how trippy that's going to be. And we're dealing with apparently alternate universes from here on out, so get used to the weirdness, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, like that's gotta be hopefully weird,
Yeah. And Spider-Man 3 is apparently going to deal with dimensions, so which I'm half and half about the idea of Spider-Man 3 being a live-action Spider-Verse movie. We had it perfect the first time. We don't need it again.
Right, but I think for some people, like part of it is the nostalgia of seeing Maguire and Garfield. Like regardless of what they may have thought of their films, like for some people, it's just nice to see some familiar faces, which is kind of like with Star Wars, I guess. Like they're bringing back like Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, and it's kind of like that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I'm just saying, like, out loud, like, we've done Spider-Verse before. It was perfect the first time. I don't need a live action version of it.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. Like everything we've been hearing is that like pretty much everyone and their mother and father are in it. So it's like, could this work? Will it feel too cluttered? Like I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Steven, did you ever see that meme of the meme with the Kevin Feige like reaching out of the screen at you, like,
Yes.
it says Kevin Feige has announced that you will be in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. I mean, if only. I would love to be paid by Marvel Studios for something.
I'm just saying, like, they haven't announced Vermin, and I'm willing to play Vermin.
Oh yeah, that'd be. I would probably just be some random bystander during like some action sequence, like on the sidewalk or whatever. I probably wouldn't even be that interesting, if I'm
No,
being honest.
you become like Spider-Man would swing by and was like, "Hey, Spider-Man just stole that guy's pizza."
Yeah, that was such a good joke. I love Spider-Man 2.
If
But
if it wasn't for like Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 2 would be my favorite. But that's Spider-Man 2 is like the number 2 for me for Spider-Man movies. I don't know where um any of the Spider-Man movies rank for you.
oh yeah, for me it's Into the Spider-Verse, and then Spider-Man 2, and then Far From Home, Spider-Man 1, and then I think Amazing Spider-Man 1 and then 2, or maybe it's the other way around, I'm not sure, and then Spider-Man 3. Um, oh, and then after Spider-Man 1 is Homecoming, so that would be above the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
Huh. See, I would. People are gonna hate me for this, but like the lowest Spider-Man movie for me is Amazing Spider-Man. I just rank Spider-Man 3 just a one thing above it because I think it's a little more. And this is gonna sound weird because that has just too many hands in the cookie jar, but it feels like there's a like more of a structure, and the action scenes feel a little more fluid. Like especially that second fight between Sandman and Spider-Man.
Yeah, I could see that. For me, it's just that it, like, okay, this is really funny, but when I originally saw Spider-Man 3, when I was like 12 and a half when it came out, I thought it was like the best Spider-Man movie ever, but like over the years, it's become like my least favorite. Like, I do think it's watchable for the memes and the silliness of it, but as a story, I feel like Peter Parker is really off-putting. Like he's a jerk even before he gets the symbiote, and
Oh
like
yeah,
there's
there's
just a lot about it
no doubt
that
about that.
doesn't really work. But yeah, I don't know. That's just me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying, like for me, it's still a bad movie. Don't get me wrong. It just, and maybe I just haven't seen it in a while. Like maybe next time I do this list in my head from best to worst, maybe Spider-Man 3 will be at the bottom, but it's like second on the shit tier list.
Yeah, my friend James, who was on the Kingsman episode, he recently said, "I just love awful movies." We watched this parody movie from 1994 called The Silence of the Hams, and that was a trip. It was so surreal and unpredictable. It's something.
You guys seriously need to watch like some Asylum movies.
Yeah, the
Like,
only one I've seen is Zombies, because my friend Zach from IPC, like I won the DVD for that in like his podcast giveaway thing, and he recorded like his own commentary for me to listen to while watching it. So that's like the only Asylum thing I've watched, but I know there are like a bunch of others I need to check out, like the Sharknado ones.
oh, like you need to watch their Asylum version of the like they do parodies of Avengers and Suicide Squad, but it's like
Yeah.
with fantasy, like grim fairy tale characters.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, I think the majority of their catalog might be on Tubi, which is free to watch and legitimate. So I just need to set aside time for it, really. But anyway, we're talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So
Oh yeah, the thing. That's right.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes we go on tangents on this podcast, and it's lots of fun. Longtime listeners already know that. So this came out for like the beginning of the Chinese New Year, and it even begins with Shang-Chi and like his parents like celebrating the Chinese New Year. So we get to see like some of their traditions and like the festival and fireworks, and I thought it was a really nice way to open the movie, you know?
It's a standard kind of movie, and it's a standard, like especially when we're doing, like I've seen this a lot in like American kung fu movies where we celebrate the start of the new year, and I'm like, oh, we're doing this again. Nice to play it safe, Marvel, or stereotypical.
Yeah, I guess I could see how it might be like predictable. I guess I'm just not used to seeing it that much in mainstream movies, but felt like it was presented in a really nice way, and you see like the family relationships and bonds, and it added layers to the character, and it makes it even more tragic when like it goes forward a couple months to like the time of the snap, and you see Shang-Chi like lose his parents and they become dust.
Yeah, it was especially hard to watch his one scene of like holding his mom, like as she's begging, "Don't let go of me, don't let go of me," and then and then he's like, "I won't let go," and then he's just holding air.
Yeah. Like when Spider-Man turned to dust in Infinity War, I thought it was kind of funny, but here it definitely felt really sad, even though we knew that the blip would be coming later on. But I thought this was an interesting way to show Shang-Chi's evolution. Like it kind of makes him cynical for a time, and it's like if people can just disappear like that, then what's the point of everything? And it makes him vulnerable to joining the Ten Rings organization over the next 5 years, before his parents reappear again, and then he like has to like reevaluate anything. It's like a really interesting inner turmoil that he's experiencing.
Yeah, the one thing that bothered me about this movie is like Shang-Chi, the whole point of Shang-Chi is that his hands are the most dangerous weapons he has. He doesn't need a gun. Why is he using a gun? And I know it's a movie based in a the Marvel movie universe. It's a different universe from 616, but like at the same time, it just irks me like, y'all know he's a kung fu artist, right? In the comics. Come on, Feige, step it up.
Yeah,
Like,
it does feel like kind of a hybrid of like he's really good at kung fu, but also, hey, he has a gun, I guess.
and I'm like, there's even moments where I'm like, I'm waiting for him in the beginning, in the opening scene, when they're like breaking into that facility for the Ten Rings, and he's just going around blowing people away, and I'm like, okay, you could clearly like this movie was paid off to be like some big kung fu movie, but yet here I am watching shooting. If I want to watch a Marvel character shoot people, I'd go watch The Punisher again. All right.
Right. Yeah, Frank Castle.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it was their way of showing that like he's kind of in a dark place at the beginning before he well, like I kind of compare it to Daredevil where like or I guess we could say with the Punisher comparison where like in his first appearance like throughout Daredevil season 2, he's in a really dark place and then it's not until uh Punisher's first season that we see that he's becoming like the Punisher that we expect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like we did that whole action sequence better and without the use of guns in Endgame with Ronin, with Clint Barton being Ronin. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me who just had that scene like when he's what was it? Like at the ending scene where the guy like pulls out the knife and is about to be like, "All right, let's go hand to hand," and Shang just pulls out the gun and just shoots him in the head. I'm like, wow, I feel ripped off right now.
Yeah, that felt very Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, it's almost like Kevin Feige was like, huh? We also owned by the same guy who owns Lucas. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, they do like rubbing in the Star Wars connections, like when Peter Parker's like, "Hey, remember that old movie, The Empire Strikes Back?" And that line felt kind of cringy to me, if I'm being honest.
It still does for me. And like when they reference Alien, I'm like, and keep in mind, this was like right when the buyout happened for
Yeah.
Fox. Like when they did that cringe line for Alien, I'm like, okay, we get it. You own Fox now. You have Star Wars, Disney. We get it. You don't need Peter Parker to just stop it. But it's funny. It's all these lines are coming from the one character they don't have the movie rights to.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but that's hilarious. So the Ten Rings organization was first alluded to as like a terrorist organization in the first Iron Man movie. What'd you think of like the presentation of the Mandarin here compared to like previous quote unquote? I just messed that up. I'm gonna edit that out. Quote unquote Mandarin appearances slash teases in like earlier in the MCU.
Well, it's finally nice to see that picked up again. That we haven't really had a pickup on that since that little Iron Man 3 short that basically said, yes, there is a real Mandarin out there. You just haven't seen him yet. And here, on a personal level, I'm I'm sad that we never got Mandarin in the Iron Man movies. That's like his arch nemesis. Like, why did we never get like the real Mandarin? Um, but here it's like he's menacing. He's terrifying. He is like everything I wanted from the Mandarin to see finally in the MCU. He's imposing. He's clearly that he has the rings, but what I like is that he is just offing people with just his bare hands, and I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, like it shows that he can do stuff even without the use of the ring's powers. Like he still uses them, but he's still like really good at like hand-to-hand combat. And yeah, like I'm with you. I'm really glad that they finally picked this up because when Iron Man 3 was coming out and like by then I was like aware of the Mandarin. Like I backtracking, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance was my introduction to like the larger Marvel universe. Like before then, I'd only seen the Spider-Man movies, and then that game showed me like, whoa, all these characters are in the same universe, and so learned about the Mandarin there and saw him in Invincible Iron Man or whatever that animated movie was called, which was pretty bad.
Yo, yeah, that's terrible. Like, did you ever watch that Iron Man Armored Adventures? That one where Tony Stark is basically Spider-Man.
I know of it, but I haven't watched it. I have seen the '90s one, which is kind of hit and miss.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah, like when
it seemed like Mandarin would finally be in Iron Man 3. It was kind of weird because it's like, wait, he's played by an English actor here, and then it turns out to be a fake, like an actor pretending to be the Mandarin, and then you have a Killian later saying, "I am the Mandarin." Like it's like a from a certain point of view thing, and it's like I felt ripped off like watching Iron Man 3, and I felt let down. And then they did that short "All Hail the King," which backtracked and said, "No, there is a real Mandarin out there." And for a while, I wasn't sure if they would ever pick up on that, and this felt like it paid off finally, which was like I just appreciated having this. Like, yeah, the Mandarin with the actual 10 rings with like which can do like ice blast, hypnosis, electro blast, flame blast, white light, sonic blast, impact beam, vortex beam, disintegrator beam, and black light. And it's like I read that off a list in case you listeners were wondering. But but yeah, it's like yeah, like they went all in and did it in such a way where it fits with like the modern movies, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. The one thing that was like, I'm surprised they got away with this in the movie of just how violent it seems is like they brought Guy Pearce back to play Killian, and only to have him like strapped up to some weird stolen Chitauri tech, which I'm like, wow, we're finally bringing back the stolen Chitauri tech thing again. And they've got him hooked up to like a machine that's like keeping him alive, but not like he's in a state of like of like, how did they describe it? Like it was a mass of energy, like he's everywhere but nothing at the same time, and he feels just constant pain. I'm like, damn, that is dark.
Yeah, it's like there were even moments where like you see like these expressions on his face. It's like yeah, like you can tell it's excruciating, and like real props to like his acting right there.
Yeah. Also, like I guess Guy Pearce just needed a check, so neat. um, but
Don't we
they
all?
also made it. Yeah, don't we all? I I love how like Killian is like screaming out from this machine, like just let me die, just let me die, and he said, and Mandarin's just like, oh, I'll let you die a couple hundred more times, and just turns up the volume on the machine.
Yeah. Yeah, the Mandarin is very menacing, but also has like his own twisted sense of humor, but it's not like the normal kind of Marvel humor that we see. It's like it's kind of like if you see Darth Vader's twisted sense of humor and it works, it's like still menacing. It doesn't feel out of place.
There actually is like an, I don't know if this was meant on purpose to be a Star Wars reference, but that scene later in the movie where he like breaks the one guy's neck after trying the Mandarin, he like bows to the Mandarin and is like, I'm apologizing to you, and he grabs him by the throat and just crushes his throat, drops on the ground, goes apology accept. Was that?
Yeah,
I feel like that would be a straight up Star Wars reference.
yeah, that apology accepted thing has to be a Star Wars reference. Like we know Kevin Feige just loves Star Wars, and so does everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
may I just say, and I know we're going to talk more about the Mandarin later in the movie, but may I just say it's so nice to have a unsympathetic villain again in just a Marvel movie. Um, it's just so nice to see a villain where, like, I know Thanos is like, oh, you know, he's the big bad and pure evil, and thank God they didn't try to redeem him or anything. Um, that would have been damn stupid. But it's just nice to have a villain where you're like, no, you got to stop him. It's not like with some people who, like with Thanos, who are like, no, I get where he's coming from. No, you don't get, because Mandarin is just like, I'm just evil. I am just a monster.
yeah, it's like there are little allusions here and there to like him possibly having a rough past, but they don't dive into it that much because I think they figured that like for a character like this, there's like you can benefit from the mystery. It's like the Hannibal Lecter thing where like in Silence of the Lambs of the book anyway, he says nothing happened to me, Clarice. I happened. You cannot reduce me to a set of influences. You know, that was like long before Hannibal Rising just effed that up, you know?
Yeah, oh, Hannibal Rising. Oh my. Um,
There's a
yeah,
throwback.
you want to see a movie that just character assassinates a great character, Hannibal Rising. But here's the other thing, and we'll go into the after credit later, but like I love the little allusion to like when he's talking to Shang for the first time before their like first big fight. He's like talking about the rings, how he found them, and they're like, and Shang, I like how he brings up, are those Infinity Stones? Because obviously, I guess the knowledge would be known by now about them. So he's like, those are supposed to be like Infinity Stones. No, I did get them out of a ship, which is, for those who don't know about the Mandarin's origin, the Makluan rings are actually alien in origin. So I'm glad they actually bring up the like alien origin of the rings.
Yeah, because we've had aliens in the MCU for several years now, so it's nice that they're at a point where they're not trying to make it more earthbound like they've done with like other Marvel movies outside of the MCU. And I even remember, I don't know if this was before Iron Man 3 came out or maybe after, but I remember speculating that one of the Infinity Stones would be like one of the rings for the Mandarin to use or something. And that ended up not being the case, but I mean, I'm happy with how they did it here.
Yeah, I'd have felt like if they did with the Infinity Stone thing, I'd have been like, all right, so we're just going to vision Mandarin if that was the case. But no, it was really cool. And again, we'll talk about later, like the rings connection to the post-credit scene. But I'm appreciative that they're like getting. It's like it's almost like they're apologizing for effing up the Mandarin the first time around.
Yeah, and it would have been like, I get that Mandarin is mainly an Iron Man villain, and people have made the comparison between this and like, oh, Spider-Man is dealing with people who have been wronged by Iron Man, and it kind of feels like repetitive in a way, but I just loved Tony Leung's acting as the Mandarin. He was just so good in this, and I was just like really into it. I didn't really matter to me that it wasn't Tony Stark going up against him. Like I was still invested in this like Shang-Chi versus Mandarin conflict.
Yeah, I mean, I fully acknowledge that this is a alternate universe, so you just got to deal with it. But like, I feel like they're finally doing Iron Man stuff without Iron Man, like Armor Wars. That's a big Iron Man story arc, but we're doing it with War Machine. And I'm not saying like, oh, War Machine shouldn't have it, but I'm like, that should have been Armor Wars should have been Iron Man 3.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe in Marvel's What If it could be like, what if Iron Man hadn't died, and maybe we'll see him in similar stories like these. I don't know.
That's another good possibility. I actually didn't think of that.
Yeah, and I know it's animated and not live action, but it could still be a really compelling episode or whatever to watch on screen. Like, I'm really excited for Marvel's What If. It just seems like it's full of possibilities,
Yeah, that's the whole point of What If, is all of possibilities. But I'm just excited to see a Watu kind of in the MCU finally. But I guess like if you want to talk about other villains real quick, you want to talk about Razer Fist real quick?
Oh yes, let's.
Razer Fist was, well, he did his job. I mean, the fight sequence between him and Shang-Chi in the midway through the movie, that goes on par with a lot of like Ip Man or have you ever seen the Ip Man movies?
I know of them, but I haven't seen them.
This is on par with the action sequences in there.
Oh, okay, nice. And the Razer Fist in this movie is William Scott, and he has a backstory of like he and his brother Douglas like each lost a hand in a car accident, and like his brother's dead by now. So I guess in this case, Razor Fist kind of has a bit of that sympathetic backstory, but I also appreciate that they didn't focus on it too much. So it's kind of like, yeah, he had a sad backstory, but he's also doing really terrible stuff. So I'm like rooting against him. And it just looks really cool, him with like the long knife and like doing combat with Shang-Chi. It's like really intense.
Yeah. Two things that really made me go, oh, wow, was one, the scene where Razor Fist is like interrogating people and he hears crying upstairs and he goes, one moment. He goes upstairs, there's silence, and then he comes back down wiping his fist off. And the other scene, and this was a fun little nod, and again it teases like, oh, we're gonna be doing it sometime, is the like the three marks on the three like slashes on his back, and and one of the 10 Ring members, how'd you get that? And he goes, I want to meet the guy. Because for those who don't know, Razer Fist is a like C-list Wolverine villain too. So that was a clear reference to Wolverine.
Yeah, and you really gotta wonder, like, how are they gonna bring like Wolverine into this eventually? But it seems like they're laying the seeds for that, which gets me really excited. And of course, lots of people are like fan casting, like who could play Wolverine, and they're pretty much fan casting everyone. But it's like we'll see it when it happens, I guess.
Yeah.
Complete with the '90s theme song.
Dude, I'm just saying, like, if they ever do a Marvel Studios X-Men movie, I want them to just do an action sequence with the 90s theme playing. Like, them
Yes.
it's an action sequence, and it's them just destroying Sentinels.
Yeah, like I was hoping that they'd include that theme for Dark Phoenix, since that was set in '92. But in hindsight, it wouldn't have really fit. And I do love Hans Zimmer's music for that movie. But I guess the closest that we got to it in like live action is in the first episode of The Gifted. I think it's like someone's ringtone. But it'd be cool for them to like bring it back in like a future MCU X-Men movie. Like, I would really dig it.
Yeah, just it doesn't even have to make sense. Just play it, and I guarantee you, just play it in the middle of an action sequence of like the X-Men just fighting like a Sentinel or the Marauders or something, and I guarantee you, not a single damn person in that theater will stay quiet for the whole minute, however long that sequence goes, because you'll be like, it's the f***ing theme.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the MCU in general, right? Like, it doesn't have to make sense. It's just fun, you know?
Yeah. But getting back to Razor Fist, he is like a nice little mini boss villain for Shang to fight. I especially dug how they utilize, because you'd think like there's only an X amount of move a guy with like razor hands would have, but no, they actually like really played up that this guy, if he hits you, you are going to get mortally wounded or you're going to get killed. Like, I love like when Shang gets cut by him the first time and he's like, oh crap, he touched me. Ooh, I gotta move faster.
Yeah. And we do see Shang like try to pick up the pace. Like, we gradually throughout the movie see him try to be faster, so that like by the end of it all, he's like more coordinated. Like he'll still like get hit and whatever, but I feel like throughout the movie there's this feeling that yeah, he's getting better as he's learning more like kung fu and stuff. And I just really like seeing like his journey and what he's able to do, and like it was just so cool to see.
Yeah. I will say, like, I know that they kind of build up Katie, you know, Aquafina's character as like his love interest, but she's just reminds me so much of Darcy, Darcy from the Thor movie. Like, her humor just does not work here. Like, there's a serious moment, and I'm like, after Shang-Chi like finds a dead family after Razor Fist butchered that family from earlier, and like he's just standing there like in the rain, just like, I failed these people. I'm, how can I call myself a great warrior if I can't save the innocent? And I'm like, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, don't you do it, movie. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. And then Aquafina makes a joke, and I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, it reminds me of I mean, go back to Iron Man 3. There's that moment toward the end where you think that Pepper dies in the fire, and then it's like super serious moment, sad music, and then Iron Man is trying to like take down a Killian, and he tries to summon a suit, and then the suit breaks as it arrives to him, and it's like a laugh out loud moment. It's like real mood whiplash, like it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to like direct it at the actress herself. It's just the writing. I feel because she's known for doing comedy, and she's really like, she can be really funny. It's just, I hate, because every Marvel movie has this problem. It's not just this movie, it's every Marvel movie. Like, oh, we got to do a joke real quick for the kids. Um, and I was like, it just needs to stop. Just I was hoping Shang-Chi would be different, especially after that intro sequence of how heavy it was, and
Yeah.
again the whole massacre scene. But I'm like, oh, you did it again. What the hell? It's just a running theme, and it's getting old.
Yeah, I think an exception to that problem was the Incredible Hulk. Like, it did have a few jokes, but it never felt to me like they were trying too hard with the jokes. Like, the Incredible Hulk is kind of an anomaly where it's a more serious MCU movie, and it was like, at the start before they like figured out their own formula that they ended up running with. But yeah, it's kind of gotten predictable and kind of annoying that they rely so much on the jokes sometimes. It's like, you don't have to always do that. Just tell a good story. If something happens and it feels heavy, just let it feel heavy.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just like, oh, we're trying to do the Whedon thing of making the jokes in the middle of a serious situation to lighten the mood, but also like play around with the story. Like everyone's just trying. Like I blame Whedon's Avengers for that. The only two that I feel like it works, like, and this is and I use this term lightly, like with quotation of works, like Sean Gunn and Taika Waititi when they do it in Marvel movies, like they get it. Like,
Oh,
and even
James
then,
Gunn.
it's like, yeah, James Gunn, thank you.
It definitely works with the Guardians. With Ragnarok, I felt like the first act, most of the humor didn't work for me, except for when Loki disguised as Odin says, "Oh," shit. And then when Valkyrie stumbles out of the ship because she's drunk, I guess like those were the only two jokes that made me laugh, and it didn't really pick up for me until the Hulk comes into the movie, and from then on it was smooth sailing for me for the most part. But then like toward the end, you get the annoying thing where Bruce Banner kind of looks dead, but they play it off as a joke, and then later the Hulk annoyingly fights the Thing when he's not supposed to, and it kind of like took me out of the immersion for a bit. But for I guess for the most part, the humor worked for that movie.
Yeah. Here it just felt like really misplaced. Like Marvel kept saying, "Oh, it's going to be like a serious kung fu movie," and I'm like, "You said that before with Mulan, and it didn't work there, and it ain't work." Like I mean, with humor, what like tonally, and again, like maybe that's just a curse for the Marvel movies at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like they have a hard time shaking it off, and it's kind of hard for them to do so, given that people have given a lot of criticism to some of the DC movies for being super serious. So it kind of feels like some of the DC movies felt like an overreaction to or overcorrection type of thing where um yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I feel like maybe at first they were trying to be different from Marvel, like to set themselves apart, and then uh, they realized, oh, we actually should have some humor, and like some of that worked for movies like Shazam and Birds of Prey, in my opinion, anyway. But like, I feel like Marvel, at least at the moment, is it feels like they're trying not to, like they seem kind of afraid to make some of the missteps that people perceive DC to have made with their movies, and so they're like, we're in our safe lane. We don't have to get too wild, but I do want them to get more experimental.
Yeah. And this is very experimental, like doing a like superhero kung fu movie. Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, the fight sequences are shot beautifully. Like if I was to give this movie for any like major praise, and I do like this movie, don't get me wrong, but if I was to give this movie major praise, it would be the fight sequences because they are beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite fight sequence in here?
Oh yeah, my favorite fight sequence was so like much of this movie is set in China, but I really love the fight sequence where they go to Japan because like Shang-Chi figures out that that's where the 10 rings are striking next. And they're on the rooftop and they're like running across different roofs and like just fighting and whatnot. And like you even get like a couple of the supporting characters taking part, so it's like not just him and it's like multiple people. And I thought that was very well choreographed, especially when Shang-Chi like found a hammer luckily and was able to like use that on one of his opponents.
Yeah. To be clear, for those who haven't seen the movie, he's not talking like Mjolnir or anything. He's just talking like a construction hammer.
Right. Yeah.
I think for me, my favorite fight is the one-on-one, like second fight between Razer Fist and Shang-Chi, and it's shot so beautifully. Like this is something like right out of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, that's another one I've known of for a long time, but still need to see.
Yeah. I will say that it's a tie because my second favorite is when Shang walks into the dojo and it's like, this is straight up a reference to Fist of Fury from Bruce Lee. And I get it because Shang-Chi was at Marvel's Bruce Lee. Like that was always his thing, was that Shang-Chi was based off of Bruce Lee. It was part of that whole Bruce-ploitation era in the 70s.
Right.
And he goes into the dojo and he's like looking around and then he just like whips out the nunchucks and I'm like, okay, okay, now we're really doing Bruce Lee stuff.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
And it was funny because like I like the subplot that the 10 rings have been like they train the other agency, like other evil groups in the Marvel universe, like they train Hydra agents or AIM or like, and I like it, like, oh, we're referencing AIM again. We haven't done that since Iron Man 3.
Yeah,
and we're making them like an actual group.
Yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings about it because it kind of feels like they're retroactively making it so that they were connected to everything. And like in Marvel, like it feels like every single thing has to be connected. But so like there's a part of me that's like that feels too convenient, but also that is kind of cool, like having the hindsight that they were kind of involved with these other organizations. So I mean, so I have mixed feelings about it, but I guess it doesn't matter too much, if that makes sense.
See, for me, it's a little different because I'm okay with it because it's actually like a twisted version of like how actual U.S. soldiers are sent to train with with Native Americans or Israeli special forces to learn their tactics. So that makes sense to me. It's like a twisted version of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And someone's going to go, hey, that doesn't, yeah, there's no, really, people wondering, there is like a protocol for U.S. special forces like Navy and Black Ops where they're trained in like Native American like takedown tactics. So yeah, it's actually not too dissimilar from that. And I was like, okay, so I was looking at it like it's yes, it's overly connecting everything, but at the same time, it's like, okay, we're referencing at least some kind of real world thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you could see how they study stuff that's happened in real life and kind of repurpose that for the sake of this kind of story.
Yeah, I will agree with you though that it does get a little overboard because they say like Taskmaster trained with it. I'm like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
So the Taskmaster was a little much.
Yeah. Speaking of connections, what did you think of Michelle Yeoh playing another character in the MCU here? Like she played Olita Ogord in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but here she plays Jiang Nan.
Honestly, I forgot she was in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 until I went home and watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Yeah.
I legit forgot she was in Guardians, and I'm not saying like she was forgettable. She just had a small role, and then I watched the movie. I'm like, wait, that's Michelle Yeoh. Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, she is a great actress. Like she's awesome in Star Trek Discovery, and I loved her here. But I'm kind of with you in that I forgot she was in Guardians until I like looked it up later. Because here's the thing: there's some Marvel movies where I've only seen them once, and it was like in the theater. and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is one of those. Like, I've only seen it once. Like, I loved it, but I haven't gone out of my way to rewatch it since then.
Yeah. And someone's gonna get mad at me in the comments or whatever, but that's the same way I am with Captain Marvel. It's not that I hated it. I just watched it once and went, I liked it. And then I haven't watched it again. It's like I've had no desire to watch Captain Marvel again because I was like, I liked it, but like I don't need to watch it again. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, like for me, I guess I remember the movies well enough. So like when Infinity War was coming out, people would be like doing these like 20 movie marathons or whatever it was to prepare for it. And me and my brother were like, no, we're not going to do that. Like we remember shit. And like I think I made a post one time where it's like someone asks, have you did you watch all the other MCU movies in preparation for Infinity War? And I said yes. And they say, how long did it take? And I say 10 years because I watched all them in the theater, you know?
Yeah. Um yeah, my ADHD will just not allow me to sit that long rewatching all the movies. Um so I and I also like how that's the other thing I guess going back to Michelle Yao is that um maybe we're just overcasting, like maybe we're just getting to the point where there's only so amount of roles that characters like hell Marshala Ali is playing Blade and he played Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. But
Yeah, and I
the
think there was
Netflix
an
movie,
actress in Luke Cage who was also in Civil War, if I remember correctly.
exactly. Um but those are no longer in canon, but it's still going to bother me. I know those Netflix Marvel shows, almost said movies, those Marvel shows are no longer canon, but it's still going to bother me. And it even bothers me more um, that this Guardians of the Galaxy is in canon and we still got this.
Yeah, like they haven't, I don't think they've outright said that the Netflix shows are non-canon, but it kind of feels that way because you know, it kind of feels like the Star Wars Legends situation where it feels like there's not a whole lot of synergy between um that well, I guess it's kind of different because some expanded universe stuff tried to tie into the movies at the time, but it feels like with the Netflix stuff and the feature films there wasn't as much synergy, whereas because I guess there was like a split and you had like Marvel Studios and Marvel Television, but for the Disney Plus shows there's more synergy, like it feels more connected, and so it'll be interesting seeing how that plays out. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe we're kind of getting, is that the Netflix shows don't feel as canon as the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah. Like they actually straight up reference and this movie can't help itself but realize it's saying it's connected to everything. Like there's a if you there's an Easter egg and I looked this up, is that there's an Easter egg where in the Ten Rings HQ you see like they were looking up Wanda's like bubble in WandaVision. Like they were investigating that too.
Yeah, you gotta have that cross media advertising. Gotta tell the theater audience to, oh, go watch this on Disney Plus.
Yeah. What did you think of the other supporting cast around Shang-Chi?
I thought that they did their parts well enough. Like, you know, you had Jiang Li and Xia Ling, as well as John John and a couple others. And it's like they each did their part. I feel like they could have. I guess if they wanted to, they could have added more screen time for them. But I also don't know what more they could have done with them because, you know, it's super focused on Shang-Chi for the most part.
Yeah, this is Shang-Chi, not Shang-Chi and his amazing friends.
Just have Shang-Chi accompanied by the Human Torch and who was the other one in that show?
It was Iceman and Firestar.
Oh, right. Okay. I was getting fire powered superheroes mixed up. Yeah, that was a weird combination in that show.
Yeah. Well, it was actually supposed to be Human Torch, but someone in, I guess, production said, let's make instead of Human Torch, how about we make it a girl? Because A, it's going to be weird that Johnny's on a different team from the Fantastic Four, and B, corporate
Yeah.
needs us to have a girl. So, and it's actually funny because a lot of people forget that Firestar, even though she's a mutant, she actually her first appearance was on the TV show. She got transitioned into the comics.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends is a show I have not gone through, but I know like the memes, you know. Oh,
Yeah.
it actually turns 40 later this year. That's wild.
Yeah. I actually like I used to watch it when it did you ever have Boomerang?
Um, not personally. I think when visiting my cousins one time, like they had Boomerang, and so like I knew what Boomerang was. I knew the shows it had, like all the old Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Well, they
Um,
used to it used to be that they had played Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends on there, so that's where it was my first exposure to it. So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I might check it out at some point. I just don't know when. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? That this movie was packed with a lot of stuff. It's like, where do we even, you know? Like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I love the designs of the 10 rings. Like they have like a really good aesthetic, and you just know that people are gonna like want to like buy 10 rings merch, you know?
yeah. It's already market. I can already tell it's being marketed for the next thing, and I like how the each of the rings looks so distinct. It's not like the Infinity Stones, which are like they all look the same, but they're different colors. Here, they're like the rings are shaped different around the gems inside the rings,
Yeah.
and like each of the rings like loosely just by the designs or etching on the rings, they like correlate to the powers they have.
Yeah, like you could tell that the prop department was having a lot of fun designing these, and I love how intricate the designs are. It just goes to show all the time and care they take into these things. It's like they bring these objects out people are so used to seeing on the panel, on the page, and just bringing them to life, and it's just eye candy.
Yeah. Oh, did you have a favorite ring design?
Oh, my favorite ring design. I think it would have to be the one that the Mandarin uses for hypnosis. Like I love the swirling effect and how trippy it looked. Like we're not really used to seeing that sort of thing in these movies, but I really dug it. And like how he was able to use that to manipulate some like minions of his own, and it was just like, yo, you better watch out for this guy.
Yeah. I would say my favorite ring would be the electro ring of just like how he just plunges it into like the power like a power station and just charges it up and just overloads the whole transformer. Um and he just takes out an entire city just by overloading like this power station. I know there's a better word for it. I'm just I'm tripping over my words. I was just thinking like if I was to pick a second favorite ring, it would be like the blacklight ring because I'm like blacklight, that's stupid. But no, it's like makes utter darkness around him, and like that final fight between him and Shang-Chi, like he just turns everything dark, and Shang-Chi gets like his ass beat for a while, and then he has to like refocus and just listen for him. Like he like he and I also like how we didn't talk about this when we were talking about Mandarin earlier. Is like how he uses the rings in junction with his fight hand to hand fighting. Like it's almost like something out of Avatar.
Yeah, the Last Airbender. I can see that. Yeah. Of course, the going back to the Electro ring, like with the green and gold on there, like it's hard not to think of Electro, the Spider-Man villain, whom we
They
may
had
actually
to have been
see.
they had to have been thinking of that.
Yeah,
They that had to have been intentional.
yeah, like
It's kind of like with
even the shapes on it, like it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely an Electro Easter egg.
yeah, which is weird because we are getting Electro. So why did you even bother with the reference if you're going to do it anyway? The impact beam ring was pretty cool. I like how it's not like it's not like a disintegration ray. It's more like no, cave your chest in.
Yeah.
And I like the inscriptions on them. Like if you look back, it's like there's the Chinese symbols for each of like their designation, which again, like it's show don't tell. It's not like Mandarin is telling you each ring. It's like, oh, we're using visuals to convey the rings. That's a neat concept. I haven't seen that in a while in a Marvel movie.
Yeah. This is something I just remembered, but I did think it was kind of a bit much when they inserted that little flashback to when like the Mandarin goes after Trevor Slattery and just kills him with his 10 rings for like being a like imposter, like trying to claim to be him. Like it kind of felt tacked on, like it was just there to please people like me who didn't like that twist in Iron Man 3. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, they could have done it without that.
Yeah. And why did it have to be like added when he has like a like although I will admit it does pay off the whole skull on the Mandarin's throne. Like the skull he keeps like petting and like tapping when he's upset or something. It's like, oh, that's Ben Kingsley's skull.
Yeah.
I am with you that it does feel like it's kind of like how Rise of Skywalker treated Last Jedi. It almost feels like that.
Yeah, I think I was kind of thinking of that in like the corner of my mind, but yeah, it does kind of feel like that.
Yeah, like we're retconning stuff because fans were so loud about it.
Yeah, it like it definitely has that vibe. I agree.
Yeah. I will say that like I was going about the rings, this is a very visual story too, where like again it goes into where the action tells the story or where the scenery tells the story. It's very much like again those classic Bruce Lee or any kung fu movie from the 70s where it depends more on show don't tell. So I will give the creators of this movie credit for like doing their homework.
Yeah, for sure. I also kind of I know we've kind of like criticized some of the humor, but I did get a good laugh when there was that moment where there's this fight going on in the streets, like at the crosswalk, and you see like all these tourists or whatever, and one of them is played by Jaden Smith, and he sees a Shang-Chi fighting, and he's like, "Whoa, kung fu is pretty cool," and it's like, yeah, I see what you did there, Marvel. I know Jaden Smith was in that Karate Kid movie that should have been called the Kung Fu Kid because he was doing kung fu, not karate.
Yeah. It was that one for me. It took me to realize, oh, that's Jaden Smith. The one that got me howling, was the Jackie Chan cameo where he like put after during it's the same fight scene too, where like Jackie pops his head out and he's like, "Hey, you kids stop, or I call the cops."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Don't make me come down there." And I'm like, how did they hide Jackie Chan in this movie?
Yeah, they like were really good at keeping that from leaking out.
Yeah. And I was from then on, I was expecting Donnie Yen and Jet Li to make cameos too. Maybe that will be the running thing with the Shang-Chi movies, that Donnie Yen and like other kung fu experts will be like making fun little cameos in the movies.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Did you ever watch Jackie Chan Adventures like growing up?
I love that show.
Yeah. Yeah, that show was like my introduction to Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does all his own stunts in that show, you know.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like they didn't make a reference in the movie where he's like, because they bring Jackie Chan's character back for one quick scene because like Shang kicks a guy through his apartment window and he's like, "Oh, bad day," and runs out of the room. I'm like, did they just reference Jackie Chan Adventures?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that they definitely knew the audience for, or like some of the audience members for this movie may have seen that show. So it was cool to have those little Easter eggs and shout outs here and there.
Yeah.
But what'd you think of the like final confrontation toward the end?
It's not one of my favorite fights. Here's where I feel like the editing got a little choppy. But at the same time, I like how, like I was saying earlier, is like how Mandarin utilized the 10 rings in corporation with his martial arts, and how Shang had to like overcome that Like he had to get in close to fight, and Mandarin just was like, "LOL, nope."
Because you do see how Mandarin is really like super powered and like Shang-Chi is struggling, but like it's like throughout this movie we get characters on the side wondering if he himself is a superhuman because we're so used to like superhuman characters in this universe. But it's kind of cool that he's just good at kung fu. Like he's just a dude, you know? And like this final confrontation was really intense. And while he does end up getting the upper hand when like they manage to get like a few of the rings off of Mandarin, I do appreciate that like that Mandarin's defeat wasn't like a permanent defeat. Like some Marvel movies have this problem where they just kill off the villain and they're never to be seen again. But here it's clear that like Mandarin will be back at some point.
Yeah, like after Shang breaks his hands, he's like, I'm gonna kill you. Like he's like, because I love the moment where Mandarin's like, oh, you're just gonna give me mercy and throw me away. He's like, no, I'm gonna kill you. And Mandarin has that moment of, well,
Yeah.
But then like he gets away, and you're like, how the hell did he get away? And we'll get to the very end credits scene and talk about that and like how it ties into that final scene of how he got away. But no, I liked it. I'm glad we're not doing the whole let's kill off a character with potential. I'm hoping that's not the case with Kang the Conqueror in Quantum Mania.
Yeah, and Razer Fist is in custody, but you know, he could break out. Yeah, so he could be back as well.
He needs to go fight Wolverine again. Yeah, we need him for the next Wolverine movie.
Yeah. But I guess with that, we could just, since we touched upon it, we could just go into the credit scene while we're at it.
Yeah. So the credit scene was really cool. Of like the mid-credit scene talks about the 10 rings and their alien origin, and it then says, the rings are like, what is it? I'm trying to remember how it goes. Is like Mandarin is talking to somebody like the origin of the rings, and he says they're talking to me. And the other guy says, what are they saying? He says, the Makluan are returning. And for those who don't know who the Makluan are, they're a race of alien dragons. That's where Fin Fang Foom comes from. So I guess the next movie will feature Fin Fang Foom.
It could be interesting seeing how they try to like retrofit that lore into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a way that works and just feels right. Like it's kind of a balancing act, I guess.
Yeah. Again, another Iron Man villain that we should have seen in Iron Man. Not here. But we're seeing him here. But yeah.
Yeah, I just hope they handle it well, you know?
Yeah. Have you have any idea of who Fin Fang Foom is? Because I freaked out when I was like, oh my god, Fin Fang Foom!
Yeah, I like know the name, but I can't remember if I've ever watched anything that includes the character.
He is like an Iron Man villain. He's an alien dragon. He was like one of Stan Lee's first creations.
Okay.
And basically he's like from a race of intelligent alien dragons. He's the guy who made the rings.
Okay. He appears in the 90s Iron Man show. I guess I just couldn't remember.
Yeah. Foom is think like the rings and him are like Shendu from the Shendu and the Talismans from Jackie Chan Adventures. Think like that.
Yeah.
So the mid-credit scene, I was like freaking out because finally we're getting Fin Fang Foom. I just wish it was Iron Man fighting him, but I'll take it. And then the end credit scene. Oh my god! If you want to talk about like what the big phase is, and again, it's another middle finger to DC. It's like we find out who the Mandarin was talking to in the mid-credit scene. It's Baron Zemo, and he's like, if the Avengers, but now there's time for a new for new masters to rise. I'm like, oh my, we're doing the Masters of Evil.
Yeah, because Falcon and Winter Soldier included Zemo, and so to have that connectivity here, it's like really cool that, and like if they're doing Masters of Evil, you gotta wonder like, could Ultron come back in a way? Like, what's gonna happen?
Well, remember that Abomination is still alive. The leader was touched on, but we never did anything with the leader.
Oh, we need leader. Like I've been waiting years for that.
We could get MODOK. Um, there is a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of characters we could use.
Yeah, because I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. considered using MODOK, but they were shot down by Marvel Studios because I guess they had plans for MODOK potentially.
Yeah, so there could be MODOK. There could be what's a Marvel MC a character you'd like to see part of the Masters of Evil?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm trying to think of like what other Marvel villains there are who could like come back or be introduced for Masters of Evil.
We could do Sin, Red Skull's daughter.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, there's like a lot that they could do. But like I myself have not read much about like Masters of Evil stories, so I legitimately don't know like what to expect.
Yeah. They're basically like the big villains. They're like the anti-Avengers. They're like the actually no, it's like Marvel's equivalent to Legion of Doom.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Yeah, do you think they would ever do a movie where it's just from the villain's point of view, or do you think that that's too risky for them to try?
honestly, I feel like they should because that's the one thing DC's beating them at is doing villain movies.
Yeah, like Joker was really good.
Yeah, Joker, and I'm interested in Black Adam and
Yeah.
James Gunn's Suicide Squad because, like, that's the thing you have to give DC is that they're trying at least different things with the villain movies. I want to see them just be like, okay, let's do a villain movie to compete with DC.
Yeah, and I mean, there was that attempted Sinister Six movie from Sony, and we've had like the Venom and Morbius stuff on their side, but for Marvel Studios proper, it's like they haven't experimented much with like villain movies. So, like, I mean, they could try it. Like, people are just already have a lot of faith in Marvel. Like, they'll see it regardless.
Yeah. Um, you could have them like, and you don't even need them to win. You just need to like just have it be like evil Avengers coming together to fight like a hero or something.
Just have the villains lose, but at the end they have an inspirational speech about how they should keep on trying to spread their evil. Just never give up.
Never give up, never surrender. Dude, MODOK should be played by Tim Allen.
Yeah, that was not who I was thinking of. I was thinking like maybe Wallace Shawn, but who knows?
Or actually, who'd make a good MODOK? Ron Howard's brother.
Oh yeah, something Howard.
Chris Howard, right?
Is it Clint Howard? I think it's
Clint Howard. That's it.
Clint Howard.
Yeah, Clint Howard. Dude,
yeah.
Clint Howard would be such a good MODOK.
I could see that. Yeah, that'd be cool. I guess we could go into final thoughts and score out of 10. And when we do score out of 10, this is something we've started doing recently on the podcast. We choose a unit of measurement. It could just be a random thing from the movie. So, like, it could be, like, for example, for Batman versus Superman, I might say, oh, I give that 4 out of 10 jars or whatever.
Right.
Because of that awkward scene.
Okay, I hear you, man.
All right, so what are your final thoughts and score out of 10 for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings?
I would say that it's a balanced movie. I will say the humor does get in the way, but the action scenes and the internal and just the scenery, this movie better get an Oscar for cinematography. Just how beautiful some of the shots are. At least a nomination. What am I talking about? It will get a nomination. Disney will have that much money. I give it a 7.5 of the 10 rings out of 10.
Oh, that's actually a good one. I think I was thinking of using that as a measurement, but then I forgot, like, as we were recording. But yeah, I think I may have enjoyed this one a bit more than you did, but I can see that we agreed on a bunch of points. Like, yeah, there was misplaced humor here and there, but the choreography was like really good, and I was like really appreciated that they brought Shang-Chi as well as the Mandarin and like other characters to life in this way. And it makes me excited to see a sequel to this because like before this movie, I knew like nothing about Shang-Chi, and now I'm invested in him, and that's the magic of like Marvel movies where like they can introduce you to a character you're not familiar with, and then you want to see more of them. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm gonna give this one 8.75 Jaden Smiths out of 10.
You know, if it wasn't for the rings, I should have done 7.5 disgruntled Jackie Chans.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks again for being on this, Mr. Multiverse. Where can people find your stuff?
You guys can find me on Mr. Multiverse on YouTube. I do fun, geek, nerd centric stuff. Just shooting the shit about just random ideas and topics that come up and my thoughts. And you'll hear a disgruntled 30-year-old man talk about comics, but that's YouTube in general, so I think you're not so far off.
Nice, nice. Disgruntled 30-year-old man and YouTube. Name a more iconic duo.
Exactly.
Right. And speaking of the multiverse, if you're from this universe or that other universe where movies got delayed, you can email this podcast delayed replay at delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of our coverage or any of the movies or just about anything. I mean, you've heard our tangents, like lots of topics you could just email about. You can find me on online at Steven Schinder on Twitter and Instagram, Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. I have a fantasy horror comedy novel called Lemons Loom Like Rain, which is available on Amazon. More info on that at stevenschinder.com. I'm also on a Star Trek podcast called Star Trek Culture. So, you know, we've talked about Discovery Season 3, which had Michelle Yeoh, and we're currently on a rewatch of the original series, as well as covering some of the latest news. You can find that at the Culture Slate YouTube channel. And yeah, so thanks again, Mr. Multiverse.
No problem. This is a lot of fun. I would love to do this again sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll ask you about something when I wrap up here. But without further delay, have a good day.